All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the January cattle, sheep, and goats briefing. My name is Joe Parsons. I serve as chair of the Agricultural Statistics Board here at NASS. And this briefing is for the secretary and other policymakers here at USDA to better understand the content of today's reports. We're pleased to have Dr. Seth Meyer, USDA's chief economist, with us today, as well as Cynthia Nickerson, USDA's deputy chief economist. Dr. Meyer, as you know, January livestock reports represent a major output for NASS. We have several folks from our regional field office join us to work on parts of the reports. Karen Powell of our Northeast Regional Office in Harrisburg, Renee Cochran in Denver. Those were both on our cattle release. And Clarence White, also of our Harrisburg, PA office on sheep and goats. Leslie Rangel of our Lincoln office, Sean Felt of our Lincoln office, and Ben Magan of our Great Lakes region in Lansing, Michigan. So I have a few notes for our live streaming audience. The cattle report is a key statistical report. The Office of Management Budget provides specific guidance on how these reports are to be released. OMB policy precludes policymaking officials from making public comment within 1 hour of the release. So Seth, we'll get to those questions at the end of the brief. How about that? All right.
Very good.
We'll not be taking questions during this briefing from the public. However, NASS staff are available for email or phone questions, and NASS will host a social media event 1 hour of the release of these data. We strive to have everything presented at this briefing match the official record. However, should there be any discrepancy between what is presented at this briefing and the published estimates, always refer to the official published estimates. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Travis Averill, Chief of the NASS Livestock Ranking. Travis?
Thank you, Joe. And I appreciate everyone joining today's briefing. So before getting into the data, I'd like to provide an overview of the January 2023 cattle survey. Approximately 35,400 producers were sampled in all 50 states. In the survey, each state sample sizes are provided on the map. Data collection started on the 31st of December and wrapped up on the 18th of January. Normal collection methods were used to gather the data through mail, telephone, internet, and face-to-face interviews. The primary data items asked were total inventory by class, all cattle on feed, and calf crop. Over the last 12 months, drought has impacted the United States, so I thought I'd take a brief moment in today's presentation to show you the impact to how the drought has impacted the U.S. In the top left-hand corner, on December 28, 2021, moderate drought conditions were at 50%, and the severe drought was at 33%. As you can see, most of it was in the western part of the United States. However, there was a little portion or a few states impacted in the mid-Atlantic too. Moving to the top right, on June 28, 2022, moderate drought level stayed the same at 50%. However, the severe drought impact increased to 1% to 34%. And the drought had improved or come from the Northwest, had improved down. However, it had come into Texas, into the Gulf of Mexico, a little bit into the Eastern Mountain and the southeast portion of the United States. Then we get to the bottom chart here, map we have of December 27, 2022. You can see the moderate level had increased to 61%, and the severe drought level had increased to 43%. So the major takeaway from this is when you're looking at that map, you can see the higher intensity or larger livestock area, that darker green on the US map centers around the central portion of the US out of Texas up to the north. Those are all in a good portion of severe moderate level, along with a little bit coming east. So that has impacted the drought cattle industry in 2022. So let's talk about the revisions to the U.S. cattle and calves over the last few cycles. So all inventory and calf crop estimates for July 1, 2021 to July 1st of 2022 were reviewed using final calf crop, death loss, official slaughter, and updated import and export data. There were no revisions to July 1, 2021. This table provides an overview of January 1, 2022, along with the July 1st, 2022, all cattle and calves and calf crop. The initial estimate, current revision, net revision in the last column is the current inventory for the current estimate. The all cattle and calves on January 1, 2022, the net revision is an increase of 0.2%, and current estimate is at 92.1 million. The 2021 calf crop net revision is also an increase of 0.2%, and current estimate is at 35.2 million. Moving to the July 1 revision for 2022, the net revision is a decrease of 0.2%, and current estimate is at 98.6 million. The 2022 calf crop, the net revision is down 0.4%, and the current estimate is at 34.5 million. So let's move into the inventory component. First part being the January 1, 2023, all cattle and calves at the US is at 89.3 million, down 3% from 2022 total. In the bottom left-hand corner, we have the top 5 states for cattle in the United States. Texas is number 1. They're down 1.6% at 12.5 million, followed by Nebraska. They're down 4.4%. Kansas is down 3.8%. California is unchanged at 5.2 million. Kind of the takeaway, Oklahoma is down 11.5%. They're at 4.6 million. To the right is the U.S. chart of all cattle and calves for January 1 from 2003 to 2023. As you can see, the current cattle cycle started in 2014 at 88.2 million head. We're currently at 89.3 million. So here's a map of the United States for January 1, 2023. Cattle and calves inventory with comparisons to 2022. The top number is the inventory as a unit of 1,000 head. The bottom number is the percent change from previous year inventory. So the 50 states on the map, 10 states are increasing from previous year. Those are blue. The darker the color, the larger the percent change is from last year. 34 states are in red. They're down from 2022 inventory. 6 states are unchanged, and those are in gray from last year. A couple of notes to take away from this map is 1 record high in Alaska, 7 record lows, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Now let's look at the all cows and heifers that have calved. They're at 38.3 million, down 2.6% from previous year. Beef cows are at 28.9 million. They're down 3.6% from 2022. The one number in the report that is up year over year is our milk cow inventory. We're up 0.3% at 9.4 million head. In the bottom left-hand corner is the chart of the U.S. beef cows for January 1 from 2003 to present. This is very similar to the all cattle cycle, and the beef cow inventory peaked in 2019 at 31.7 million in the current cycle that we're in for this process. To the right is the beef cow chart is the chart of the U.S. all milk cow inventory from January 1 from 2003 to 2023. Takeaway from this is the last 20 years, milk cows have been in the range of 9 to 9.4 million head. The US all heifers 500 pounds and over for January 1, 2023 are at 19.2 million, down 3.7% from previous year. All three components of the heifer inventory are down year over year. Let's go to the first one. Beef replacement heifers are at 5.2 million, down 5.8% from 2022. Milk replacement heifers at 4.3 million, down 2.3% from last year. Other heifers are at 9.7 million, down 3.2% from 2022. And at the bottom is the chart of the all US heifers for January 1 from 2003 to present. The chart mirrors the peaks and valleys of the all cattle cycle. Next are the US steers, bulls, and calves for January 1, 2023. Steers 500 pounds and over are at 16.1 million, down 3.4%. Bulls 500 pounds and over are down 3.8% from last year at 2.03 million. Calves weighing less than 500 pounds are at 13.6 million, down 2.6%. At the bottom of the chart illustrating the steers, bulls, and calves for January 1 from 2003 to present. The blue represents the steers, bulls are in orange, and the calves are illustrated by the gray. Next, we have the US calf crop. The calf crop for the first half of 2022 is at 25.3 million, down 1.6% from the previous year. As a percentage of the total calf crop, the first half accounts for 73.4%. That is up from 73.1% in 2021. For the July 1 to December 31st, 2022 calf crop is at 9.2 million, down 3.2% from previous years, 6-month increment. As a percentage of the total calf crop, the second half accounts for 26.6%. The annual calf crop for 2022 is at 34.5 million, down 2% from previous year. And at the bottom is a chart of the annual calf crop from 2002 to 2022. Let's look at trade expectations compared to NASS estimates as a percent of previous year. Trade ranges are gray, trade averages are the black circle, and NASS estimates are illustrated with the red squares. Of the items on this chart, all cattle and calves, milk cows, calf crop, and cattle on feed are all within trade expectations, whereas trade expectations are lower for all cows and beef cows. All cattle and calves chart of ASB first versus final estimates for the last 11 years. The ASB first and final estimates are the blue and red line respectively. Trade ranges are illustrated with the light gray. Next is a chart I'd like to get into a little bit more on slaughter data in comparison to where our inventory has gone this year and previous years and the impact it's had. This chart has all cows and heifer slaughter as a percentage of total slaughter. So 2022 all cow slaughter accounted for 20.8% of total slaughter, up from the 20.1% in 2021. So an increase of 0.7%. The bigger increase is actually on our heifer slaughter, where heifer slaughter accounted for 30.6% in 2022. That is up 1% from the 29.6% in 2021. Typically, when we have cow slaughter, when cow slaughter is below 18% of total slaughter and heifer slaughter is at or below 28%, we see herd expansion. Unfortunately, those two percentages are way above those thresholds, and you can see from the report that we're at a lower inventory at January 2023. Another chart just to kind of bring home the message here on the chart of cattle inventory for the following year versus female slaughter as percentage of slaughter on an annual basis. Female slaughter percentage of slaughter is the red line, and the cattle inventory of the following year is the blue line. Inventory is on a decline for the last 2 years. The female slaughter has accounted for 50 and 51% over those 2 years respectively. So there's been a sharper increase in female slaughter, and that's support in our lower cattle inventory. So next, we're going to move on to U.S. cattle on feed, January 1, 2023, with comparison to 2022. Feedlots with a capacity of 1,000 head or more. Inventories at 11.7 million, down 2.9% from previous year. As a percentage of the total cattle on feed, this group accounts for 82.5%, which is higher than the 81.9% in 2022. Feedlots with a capacity of less than 1,000 head is at 2.5 million, down 6.9% from last year. This group accounts for 17.5% of all cattle on feed. And at the bottom is a chart of January 1, all cattle on feed from 2003 to current. The lowest inventory was in 2014 at 12.9 million, and the highest was in 2008 at 14.8 million. Next, following the cattle on feed, we'll talk about the U.S. feeder cattle supply for January 1, 2023 with comparisons to previous year. Calves under 500 pounds are at 13.6 million. Steers and other heifers 500 pounds or over at 25.8 million. Feeder cattle supplies of some of those three components, the total supply is at 39.4 million, 3.1% below the 2022 total of 40.7 million. As stated on a previous slide, all cattle on feed is at 14.2 million. The calculated feeder cattle supply is 25.3 million, down 2.8% from last year's total of 26 million. As you can see, how feeder cattle supply for January 1 has ranged from 24.6 million in 2015 all the way up to 28.8 million in 2003. Next, I'd like to cover the January 1, 2023 sheep and goat survey. Approximately 23,000 operations were sampled in all 50 states. The sample sizes are provided on the map for those respective states. Same data collection period as the cattle survey. As with the data collection methods, the primary data items asked were total inventory by class, lamb, and kid crop. There were no revisions to the U.S. sheep and lamb inventory to January 1, 2022. So for the January 1, 2023, the all U.S. sheep and lambs are at 5.02 million, down 0.9% from the 2022 total. And to the left of the chart are the top 5 states which their inventory for sheep and lambs in the U.S. The top 3 states saw a reduction in sheep inventory compared to last year. Texas leads the way as the #1 sheep producing state in the country, followed by California, Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. Only Wyoming and Utah for the top 5 states show a year-over-year increase. The chart of the U.S. all sheep and lamb inventory for January 1 from 2003 to 2023 shows that the sheep industry has been on a decline since 2006. And you go back to then, that was a U program that had some support for that expansion. However, it's been on the decline since. Here's a map of the U.S. January 1, 2023 sheep and lamb inventory with comparisons 2022. The top numbers are the inventory as a unit 1,000 head. The bottom numbers percent change from previous year inventory. For the 32 published states, 15 states are increasing from previous year, and those are in blue. 14 states are decreasing from 2022, and they're in red, with 3 states unchanged from last year. Those are in gray. January 1, U.S. breeding sheep and lambs are at 3.7 million, down 1.2% from 2022. For the breeding flock, let's start with the replacement lambs at 600, inventories at 635,000 head, down 0.8% from previous year. Ewes are at 2.9 million, down 1.4% from 2022. Rams are unchanged from last year for the 60,000 head. And at the bottom is a chart illustrating lambs, ewes, and rams for January 1 from 2003 to 2023. The blue represents the lambs, ewes are in orange, and the rams are in gray. Next, the last slide we have for the sheep inventory component is the US lamb crop. The 2022 lamb crop is at 3.11 million head, down 1.6% from 2021 lamb crop. At the bottom is a chart of the annual lamb crop since 2002. As you can see, it's been on a decline over that same time period. Similar to the revisions for sheep and lambs, the US goats, we had no revisions to last January's inventory. And as of January 1, 2023, all goats and kids inventory in the US was at 2.51 million, down 1.7% from the 2022 total. Market goats and kids are at 451,000, down 6,000 head from the previous year. Breeding goats and kids are at 2.06 million, down 1.8% from last year. At the bottom is a chart of the US all goats and kids inventory for January 1 from 2010 to 2023. January 1 goats and kids for the US are at 2.1 million, down 1.8% from 2022. The breeding herd for all three components are down from last year. First, we'll start with the replacement kids at 379,000, down 1.6% from previous year. Those are at 1.5 million, down 1.8% from 2022, and bucks are down 1.9% at 154,000 head. At the bottom is a chart illustrating the kids, does, and bucks for January 1, 2010 to 2023. The blue represents the kids, does are in orange, and then the bucks are in gray. The US annual kid crop, the 2022 kid crop was at 1.6 million head, down 1.3% from 2021. At the bottom is a chart of the annual kid crop since 2009. Highlights of selected upcoming NASS reports. Today's releases for sheep and goats, cattle, there's the agriculture prices report. Tomorrow on February 1st, the care report will have the cotton systems, fats and oils, flour milling and grain crushings. Crop production report will come out on February 8th. Farms, land and farms on February 17th. February 22nd will be milk production. And on February 24th will be the cattle on feed with the annual data components in addition to our monthly data and also the monthly cold storage report. Just a reminder, the 99th annual USDA Agriculture Outlook Forum will be held February 23rd and 24th, and it will be held as a hybrid event. Please register today. Just a reminder for farmers, ranchers, and producers to complete their 2022 Census of Agriculture by February 6th. Later today, as Joe stated, I'll be hosting a stat chat to answer any questions concerning the January cattle report at 4 p.m. Eastern. All reports are available at the NASS official website. I appreciate everyone attending today's live streaming session for the January cattle, sheep and goats ASB briefing. Thanks again and have a great day. This concludes today's live stream.